Well, hello and welcome everyone. My name is Sophia and I'm a junior consultant at Turner & Townsend. We are joined today by Kyla Campbell, senior consultant at Turner & Townsend for this RISE Retrofit Information Support and Expertise event, which is fully funded by the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero and is delivered by Turner & Townsend. There will be a relatively short presentation followed by plenty of opportunity and time for question and discussion. The event will be 1 hour long and we will really try to finish on time. Please keep your microphones muted and cameras switched off during the presentation. The slide deck will be made available after the event in a follow-up email to everyone that attended today. And we will provide, there will be the clean recording of this and all the masterclasses in the resource section of the RISE website. We will provide all of our useful link in the chat as well. Please do ask us any questions in the chat function as we go through, and there will also be an opportunity to ask questions directly after the presentation. Finally, I would say there will be a quick poll and a word cloud at the end of the session. So please, if you can complete them, that would help us understand the level of knowledge of our topics. I would hand now over to Kyla to start the presentation, and thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sophia. So yes, thanks everyone for joining today. So we'll be talking through embedding social value through the supply chain, obviously with a real focus on retrofit projects. So just to take us through the agenda before I kick us off with content. So we'll look at an introduction to social value. So really that theory piece as to what is social value and where does it come from. Then we'll move into social value and procurement and look at how we can create social value through procurement. And then we'll touch upon measuring social value outcomes and reporting those, and then overcoming challenges related to social value, and then finish off with a case study via one of our RISE podcasts. So to start us off with an introduction to social value. So here on the screen we have a definition of social value by Social Value UK. And they define social value as the quantification of the relative importance that people place on the changes they experience in their lives. It goes beyond the financial measures and considers the broader benefits to the community, environment, and individuals. So what we're saying here essentially is that social value really broadens the definition of value to include social, economic, and environmental outcomes. Social value is notably a sort of place-based activity, really trying to create benefits for local communities and local people and places through the delivery of projects. So what is the importance of social value? There are some significant benefits to social value, and it really depends on the social value you're creating in terms of the benefits that are created. But social value can support the local economy, support people's access into jobs. It can create new employment opportunities, and these are careers, not just jobs. Social value is a great tool to promote equality, diversity, and inclusion. It can really support the health and well-being of local residents and also create sort of really significant return on social investment. So there's lots of benefits to social value within a project. So now we'll look at the principles of social value. So these principles are taken from Social Value UK, and what we can see here is at the centre of these principles we have the involvement of stakeholders. So this is really getting that information from stakeholders in terms of what's valued by a community, what's measured, and the type of social value we create. We always want to make sure that the social value created is contextually relevant to the project or the community, and the best way to do that is by involving stakeholders and putting them at the core of the activity. Next, we have sort of an outer ring with 4 principles. So we have understand what changes. So this is about articulating how change will be created and then evaluating this through evidence gathered. So recognizing both positive and negative changes. It's really important that we weigh up both the positive and the negative, so we have a really transparent picture, which you'll see is one of the outer rings as well. And then we've got another one is to value the things that matter. So making decisions about social value related to or cognizant of the values of stakeholders, which ties back into that more central point. So, you know, the social value will create should be informed by the stakeholders' needs and their preferences. I'm not going to talk through all of these, but to point out a really important one, I think, be transparent. So really demonstrating the basis on which the social value has been created, the methodology to create it, and then sharing those outcomes with stakeholders so that it's really transparent all the way through. And that's a really, really critical part of social value creation. So next we're going to look at where social value comes from. So really thinking about the drivers of social value. So we're going to start off with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, also known as SDGs. So this is probably one of the first and most widely accepted and comprehensive frameworks of sustainability, as I'm sure you'll all be aware. And it really highlighted the importance of social, environmental and economic issues such as poverty, well-being, quality education being considered as we move into net zero, and really pulling through those sustainable development goals. So after this, after the SDGs were created, there was a steady movement towards social value, and we saw the introduction of the Public Services Social Value Act of 2012. And this introduced an obligation to consider social value. So it's thought that this act has reshaped public procurement, making it necessary for those commissioning services to question how their choices can secure broader benefits for local area and also stakeholders. So this act has helped to normalise social value as an aspect of commercial activity and created a new level of consciousness across public sector supply chains. And I think this is a really key act, and it has really driven the creation of social value in the UK. So then central government announced that it would go further and explicitly evaluate social value when awarding most major contracts through the launch of the the Procurement Policy Note 0620. So the policy note is applicable to all public sector procurements covered by the Public Contracts Regulation of 2015 and applies to the following in-scope organisations. So that includes central government departments, executive agencies, non-departmental government bodies, and also in practice that means a majority of public bodies in the UK, including governments, departments, local authorities, National Health Service, and police authorities also. So we can see here how we've got really clear policy drivers that have sort of flowed downwards into the procurement sector in the UK. So why is social value important for the supply chain? I think in retrofit, social value is so critically important because we really need to think about the work that's being delivered with retrofit, and that's making improvements to local communities within their communities. So retrofit, as you know, as you're probably all aware, is sort of something that shouldn't be done to residents, but done with residents, for residents and communities. So by including social value in a retrofit project. It can support the supply chain to enhance buy-in from stakeholders. So perhaps, increasing resident sign-ups into the project. And this ultimately helps drive better project outcomes. And also being able to say, we went in and we delivered this retrofit, but we also created these different outcomes for this community, and really harnessing the benefit of being active and delivering work in said community. So yes, and this also supports sustainable project outcomes and supports the development of sustainable supply chains, particularly when we think about the development of skills and jobs, which is obviously something that's really important in the retrofit industry, as we're probably all quite acutely aware of. So next, we're going to just touch upon some of the different frameworks for social value. So the government launched a new model to help government bodies deliver social value through commercial activities. So this model was developed for central government organisations to take account of the additional social benefits that can be achieved in the delivery of its contracts. So using policy outcomes aligned with the government's priorities. So the social value model is a really, really useful tool, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move through the slides. But whilst it's created for central government organisations, it's really quite useful for a lot of organisations and has a lot of ideas about different sort of social value initiatives that can be undertaken against different themes and different policy outcomes. Next, we have the Hacked Social Value Roadmap for social value in social housing. So this is a really specific roadmap to social housing. So it's definitely worth taking a really deep dive into, but it's again just a really useful tool in understanding the type of social value that's relevant to create related to social housing. And then finally, we have the social value National TOMS framework. So this is a slightly different approach to the social value model, but it's also a really well-known framework, and it provides different social value activities along with the sort of monetary value of the that they create within communities for different people and groups. So looking at the social value model, so what it does is it sets out the government's social value priorities for procurement. So it's essentially is a menu of social value themes, policy objectives, and assessment criteria. So just to talk through what all of those aspects within the model mean. So a theme is sort of a key area for improvement. So it's really flowing down and cascading. So we've got themes at the top, and then you've got policy outcomes. So these are tied to each themes, and these are the expected impacts of each sort of initiative under said theme. And then drilling down a little bit further, we have model award criteria. So this is a criteria on which a contracting authority chooses the best tender and awards a contract in procurement. And then the reporting metrics are the numerical outputs related to how the supplier would deliver the quantitative aspects of social value under the contract. So the reporting metrics are really that ability to communicate what social value has been delivered and how those outcomes have been met in terms of specifically what's been delivered, when, how, and how well. So just going a little bit further into that, we're going to look at the themes of the social value model. So we've got a few themes here. So theme 1 being COVID-19 recovery, and this is all about helping local communities to manage and recover from the impact of COVID-19. And then theme 2, which is tackling economic inequality. So this theme is split into two. So firstly, creating new businesses, jobs and skills, and then increasing supply chain resilience and capacity. Whilst I think all of these themes in terms of all of these social value themes are really important because they obviously all align to the government's priorities for procurement, I do think within retrofit, theme 2 is particularly significant because I think it's quite clear how both of those sort of outcomes really relate to the retrofit sector and the challenges that it faces currently in terms of the supply chain's size And then we've got theme 3, which is fighting climate change, and that's about effective stewardship of the environment. Again, a really important one for retrofit projects, I think, in terms of trying to minimise the impact we have on the environment through the delivery of retrofit projects. Theme 4, equal opportunity. Again, I mean, probably saying this for all of them, it's clear that they're all really significant themes and all really important, but reducing the disability employment gap being one policy outcome, and the next tackling workforce inequality. And then we have theme 5, which is well-being, and that's about improving health and well-being and also improving community cohesion. So next, now we've gone through sort of an overview of social value and an introduction to it, we're going to look at social value in procurement. So first, we're going to talk through a high-level approach to social value in procurement, and this is written from obviously the perspective of the supply chain in a retrofit project. So first, when you're looking to create social value and you're doing that via procurement, it's really important to understand the needs of the community local to the project that you're looking to deliver. So really understanding sort of, you know, the fabric of that community and what initiatives would be important or significant to them. So this can be done by a review of socio-economic data, engaging with residents, perhaps if you wanted to be extremely thorough, reviewing approaches in similar communities, mapping and engaging with stakeholders, and perhaps conducting a local needs analysis. Now, you don't need to do all of that at the start of the procurement stage, but you definitely want to have a really good understanding of what the needs of the community are in relation to the theme and policy outcome that's attached to the procurement. And then next, you want to make sure that you understand the social value model that's being used, so the social value framework and the metrics are being requested if they are being requested. Obviously, it can be a lot of different types of social value questions in procurement. Some can be extremely detailed and others much more light touch, which could give you sort of much more sort of room for roaming. And then so that sort of brings us on to the next stage, which is really reviewing those outcomes in the framework and then developing those commitments to meet those outcomes and preparing a high-level delivery plan. So with social value, you obviously always want to make sure that it is deliverable and we're not just putting things down that aren't achievable and aren't going to be delivered. That is definitely not the point. So by preparing that high level delivery plan, you can make sure that the social value that you're looking to deliver through the project lifecycle is sort of in scope, in budget, and realistic and aligned to the project lifecycle. And then upon contract award, you'd then obviously look to deliver that social value. And as you're doing that, monitor, report, and set those stretch targets. So really thinking about, creating the most amount of social value as possible. And then finally, as you sort of near the end of the project lifecycle, and the social value should ideally be delivered at this point, reviewing the impact that's being created, and then also doing that lessons learned exercise. So what was impactful about the social value created, what went well, what didn't, and then how can we improve for next time in the next project, and thinking about how you're going to capture those lessons and feed them through across projects. So now I'm going to talk through the types of social value because I think it's important to be clear about what the types are. Social value is all about being really specific, and so this is why I think it's important that we get really specific here. So first we have inherent social value. So these are the changes that occur because of a contract being fulfilled. So it's not considered added value and it cannot be included in those social value offers that you create within procurement. So the impact is a direct result of the paid core contract services provided to the client. So for instance, say, there was an opportunity to deliver, you were working to deliver, say, a new park to a local area, for example, then the social value created there in terms of well-being outcomes for that community, that would be the inherent social value because that's part of delivering the project. And with social value, we always want to create additionality. So it's really important we understand what's inherent And then moving on, what's embedded? So embedded social value is those business as usual activities of an organization. So perhaps delivered through apprenticeships that you may already deliver, or staff training that you already deliver, including the company's environmental and supply chain policies. So whilst this is worth noting, embedded social value can be harnessed for a specific project, it is really that business as usual activity. And then finally, that brings us on to additional social value, which is really where the winner is. And where we all should be striving to be in terms of creating social value. And these are interventions that are committed outside of other activities. So they're really, additional. They're committed because of this contract, because of this piece of procurement that's taken place. And they can be included in obviously the social value offer that you make for a specific contract, and it's looking to create outcomes that would not otherwise be created, or really embolden outcomes. So let's take the park for example. That the well-being social value there, as we've discussed, was inherent, but through the additional social value, you may decide that you wanted to do a workshop with all of the people there to discuss, how to keep the biodiversity, really high quality, and what biodiversity means, and maybe talk about jobs in biodiversity as an example. That would be really emboldening that inherent social value through an additional piece of social value, or an additional social value initiative. So next we're going to look at some top tips for what good looks like for social value in procurement. So for some of these, they may feel really obvious, but I do think they're all quite important points, and there's a lot on there, so I'll definitely talk through all of them. So first we have answer the question. So you really want to avoid discussing organisation social responsibility unless specifically asked, and this is because that's that embedded social value. What we're looking for in procurement for social value for rich projects is that additionality. So focus on specific themes and outcomes with forward-looking statements for the contract. So really, if the tendering body has used a social value model, for example, really focusing on the theme and outcome that's been pulled through there, and not deviating into themes that you think are important, because they're the themes that have been highlighted as important by the organisation who's tendering, and they obviously know their community very well. And then we've got only refer to corporate activity if it demonstrates additional value for the contract. So that's really, that's just hammering home the point about, embedded social value versus additional. Next, we have quality, not just quantity. So social value is assessed based on quality, similar to technical questions, and there's a real focus happening in the social value market for that focus on quality. It's not just about doing lots of different things everywhere. It's about, being really thoughtful about the social value that's created, and you might not do 8 initiatives, you may only do 3, but you may do them really well and really thought through and have a much bigger impact on the local community, or perhaps even just a few individuals from a community who really benefit, related obviously to the outcomes that you're looking to create. And then there's the second bullet point is really just, firming that a little bit more in terms of focus on the quality and not quantity of commitments. And then next we have be specific. So as I mentioned earlier, it's really important to be really specific with social value. So you want to propose realistic commitments aligned with the priority themes and outcomes, clearly highlight the impact on the identified stakeholders, and provide specific details for commitments. So, and that's going to provide confidence that you've assessed the deliverability of these social value commitments. So say if you're doing apprenticeships, the number and type of apprenticeships, the delivery time, the recruitment practices, what will the apprentices be working on? Really, as much detail as possible is best, because if you're saying actually these apprentices are going to work on a different project, then that's not going to fill the tendering body with confidence that the social value you're looking to create here meets the outcomes. So yeah, being really clear and specific about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how it's going to create that social value. Next, we have watch out for additionality. So again, in terms of that earlier slide, this is about committing to activities that are beyond the contract's core deliverables to avoid that double count, which would be, say, counting the inherent or the embedded social value as additional social value that's being created. We always want to strive for additionality. And the next bullet point is to say that social value is always required to be additional as part of a project. Sometimes you may see variation in that. It really does depend on the procurement, but most of the time it's all about additionality. Then next we've got do not overpromise. So this is again about making sure commitments are achievable within time frame, resources, and budget. And you can report on social value using tools like the social value portal for accountability. And then finally, making it contextually relevant. So we talked about this a little bit earlier when we looked at the principles of social value. And it's really making sure that the social value you're creating is grounded in the needs of the local area, and you are able to evidence an understanding of local challenges and what initiatives will help meet the policy outcomes that have been identified by the tendering body. So next we're going to look at creating social value. So against some of the themes in the social value model here, we've put some quite high level ideas for different social value initiatives or commitments that suppliers could take. So perhaps looking at, say, inclusive employment. And we've got creating those local employment opportunities so local people are able to benefit from the work that's taking place through the project. And then diverse workforce targets. So I've put there with an asterisk, quite importantly, not quotas. So quotas are not seen as a positive tool to improve the diversity of workforce. However, targets can be a really positive way to help improve that diversity. In terms of training and education, we've got apprenticeships, particularly for disadvantaged individuals. And that's really about thinking about the needs of, say, the supply chain and also the needs of the people within the area, and pulling those individuals into the retrofit supply chain, not to provide them with a job, but to create a potential lifelong career for them. And then we've got funded training for workforce, to making sure that we're consistently trying to improve the the skill set of our workforce, and doing that to improve their future and prospects, and making sure that actually the works that are being delivered to residents are delivered by people who are trained to the highest possible standard. And I know that's not always easy to achieve, but doing that through social value can be a really good sort of mechanism. And then jumping to support for innovation and entrepreneurship. So potentially got innovation grants for startups or free consultancy provision, thinking about, if you're quite a large supplier, how you might be able to support some SMEs who are working in the area through the project, perhaps if they're part of the supply chain, thinking about tools that you could provide them as part of the social value that you're delivering, to support the opportunities for those SMEs and the growth of those SMEs. And then we've got fighting climate change as the next theme. So I'm conscious of time, so I won't go through all of these. But say sustainable sourcing of materials, we've got use of recycled and low carbon materials, green procurement policies, and then green logistics and transportation, thinking about eco-friendly transport options, consolidated shipments. And then next is equal opportunity. So here we've got supplier diversity and inclusive procurement. So here thinking about how you might be able to engage with minority-owned businesses, support social enterprises and SMEs, and thinking about fair payment terms and how you can give those organizations a voice within the supply chain. In terms of sort of training, mentorship and career progression for marginalised groups, we've got mentorship programs for career advancement and ongoing skills and education development. And then in terms of supporting return to work programs, returnship for career re-entry and ex-offender return to work programs. So now we'll look at measuring and reporting social value outcomes. So first, with measuring and reporting on social value, we should always take a bespoke approach. So the measurement approach should be taken from what it is that we're trying to achieve. So who is the audience and what will the measurement inform? So if you're applying social value in procurement and you're drawing down from from the social value model, you might find that the reporting metrics are always written, but they're not necessarily set in stone. It's really important to think about, are these metrics best suited to the social value that you're looking to create, and could they be amplified in any way to further capture that social value? Next, we've got embed across the life cycle. So you want to make sure that all stakeholders are committed and invested in that social value measurement process right from the start of the project. Really getting that buy-in. So measurement should begin as early as possible and should continue all the way into the end of the project. And really, if you're looking at perhaps, your social value's been delivered halfway through the project, thinking about setting stretch targets, is there any more social value that can be created quite easily through processes or mechanisms that may have already been set up through the project, perhaps. Next, we have establish robust and credible KPIs for social value. So we've got an example here from the social value model. So this example KPI is total percentage of people from groups underrepresented in the workforce on apprenticeship schemes level 2, 3 and 4 plus under the contract. So that's being really specific about that additionality piece, as a proportion of all the people on apprenticeship schemes level 2, 3 and 4 within the contract workforce by UK region. So whilst that's a really lengthy KPI, it's really detailed, and that's why the social value model is so useful. But yeah, that's what a really good KPI looks like, opposed to, say, number of apprenticeships delivered level 2, 3 and 4 plus. This is really specific about the value that's being created. And next we've got be transparent. So that links back to what we spoke about earlier in terms of those principles. Transparency is really, really key in social value, and being clear about were there any negative outcomes created. I mean, ideally not, but if there were, being open and honest about them. Were there flaws in the measurement process? And really being transparent about that to take it away, to be able to drive that future change and sharing that progress meaningfully. And by share that progress meaningfully, I think it's important to think about the social value that's being created, the impact that can have on, say, resident buy-in to a retrofit project. We're also considering the way that information is presented back to the community, so that sharing it meaningfully, using terms that resonate with the community at hand, and making sure that, yeah, what you're putting out there is not going to fall flat, essentially, and is going to be able to be absorbed and digested by the community. So next we've got overcoming challenges. So we've just got a couple of challenges here in terms of social value in the supply chain. So first we've got lack of awareness. So this is about many organisations lacking awareness of the full scope of social value and what it means. And the solution there is really educating all stakeholders about the benefits of embedding social value. So taking that action within your supply chains, your organizations, to really, discuss social value and bring it to the forefront, because it is an integral part of every single project that we deliver, or it should be anyway. So it's really about, you know, bringing it to the forefront and giving it a space to have meaningful discussions and perhaps even debates. Maybe I think any sort of discussion or amplification of social value is positive if it can move towards, you know, education and awareness raising. And then we've got resource constraints. So many organizations, particularly small medium enterprises, may find social value initiatives hard to prioritize. And I think the solution here is really promoting the co-benefits for buy-in into projects that social value presents. So, for example, if we have a local area where a retrofit project is being delivered, and then this, as part of the social value, the supply chain are looking to deliver, I don't know, 8 apprenticeships, for example. And then we have 8 individuals from that area who are all being trained up in retrofit, perhaps to do a retrofit advisor type role, though I know that's not a past 2035 role anymore, but perhaps a, you know, retrofit coordinator role. And then they are learning about retrofit, becoming upskilled in it, and then having those discussions in their community about what it is they're learning about and what their potential future career later down the line as a retrofit coordinator will look like. And then when we think back to resident engagement, it's that sort of theory that people, probably a lot of you may be aware of, in terms of that local champion approach. So you then have 8 almost local champions of people who are from that local area and live in that local area and part of that community and fabric, are able to have discussions about what it is they're working on and what it is they're working towards in terms of their career, to really help, you know, increase that conversion rate for resident signups to, you know, have that retrofit delivered, which obviously then supports the overall deliverability of a retrofit program. So finally, I'm just going to wrap us up on a case study example. So Hague Housing, who are a charity which offer serviced veteran housing, have worked with E.ON to deliver retrofit under SHGF Wave 2.1. And Hague and E.ON have worked together to put together a really robust social value offer to create some really significant social value outcomes. So they've teamed up with another veteran charity to provide retrofit assessor training to service veterans to help them secure green jobs and get, you know, create themselves some really careers with real longevity to them. Sorry. So we have published a Rise podcast where E.ON and Hague Housing talk in detail through the social value that they created, how they went about it, and the outcomes of the social value. So when we share the slides today, there will be a link to the podcast that you all can go and listen to. Once I finish the slide, I'll actually just pop it in the chat as well so that you can all access it now. But yeah, just a really interesting case study example there for you all. And that brings us to the end of today's session. So I hope you found that useful. I will hand back over to Sophia.